In the headlines, government and opposition parliamentarians remain polarized after panel discussion on electoral reform. Prostate cancer patients to benefit from a high-intensity focused ultrasound machine, a first at the PMH. And a private sector business continuity plan to inform government's MSME policy. I'm Andrea Lee with the Channel 5 News. Back with the details after this.
I've been in the business for over 16 years. I get up in the mornings and I look forward to having the next cruise ship berth on island. When the visitor steps off the ship, the first impression is me. And I believe that I need to put my best foot forward and to ensure that everything I do it to the best of my ability. Based on my recommendation, visitors go to various sites, restaurants, bars, and vendors. I take that responsibility very seriously. I would like that the guest receives the same service that I have provided to that individual or guest. This business is bigger than me. Everybody plays a role. The cleaner who cleans my bus, my mechanic who does my checks, those persons ensure that I provide a quality service to the guest. The tourism dollar doesn't just stop with me. It allows me to pay the bank, visit the supermarket to feed myself and family, and have a drink with friends. My name is Jenna Gist, and tourism is my business.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow.
Thank you for staying with us. First up, Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable Francine Barron says Dominica's electoral system has produced credible elections since 1978.
Barron was among government parliamentarians at a panel discussion on Wednesday, which focused on the topic "The Electoral Process, the Way Forward." The panel discussion was organized by the Electoral Office in collaboration with the Dominica State College and the UE Open Campus.
There have been deficiencies identified, as is the case in any country, including developed countries like the United States. But overall, electoral observers invited by the government for the last two elections have pronounced our elections as credible.
The minister said, however, certain steps have also been taken to make sure the people who turn up to vote are who they say they are.
It has been recommended that ID cards should be introduced for voting. It is important to note, however, that there is no record of fraudulent voting in Dominica. None. And that fact has been noted by observers in their report. The government accepted, however, that in keeping with international best practice, it was advisable that identification cards be issued for voting.
Barron says the right to vote is a fundamental right and government will not take any action to deprive Dominicans of that right.
In adopting the reasoning of the Canadian Supreme Court, our courts accepted the concept and principle that, and I quote, "The provisions of the Act governing the exercise of the right to vote may be said to have a constitutional pedigree. In applying the law and the regulations, preference must be given to the recognition of the right to vote, and the legislation must be construed in a manner which promotes enfranchisement and guards against disenfranchisement." And I just repeat that again. The legislation must be construed in a manner which promotes enfranchisement and guards against disenfranchisement. It has been proposed that the Electoral Office should conduct a verification exercise, essentially to go to every home in Dominica and meet with persons on the register, and in effect, those they do not find should be removed from the list. The natural inference of such an exercise would be that any person who is residing out of Dominica during that time would be removed from the list. So, for example, if you happen to be at college studying on a 4-year assignment, or are overseas living, let's say in New York or Antigua, you come home every 2 years for Creole Festival, Carnival. If during that verification exercise you cannot be in Dominica, your name would be removed from the list. That's what is being proposed. The government has said very clearly that it cannot and will not support any exercise that will have the effect of disenfranchising persons without due process.
In related news, no compromise coming out of Wednesday night's panel discussion on electoral reform. Leader of the parliamentary opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton, has this to say in response to concerns expressed by Honorable Francine Barron on disenfranchising voters.
The United Workers' Party is uncompromisingly opposed to the proposed amendments to the Registration of Electors Act, seeking to authorize confirmation of persons on the list of eligible voters at specially designated registration offices overseas. The explanation, you heard it tonight, that such action is necessary to protect the right to vote and thereby prevent disenfranchisement of voters living overseas is seriously flawed and absolutely without merit. The responsibility before us is to reform our electoral system to ensure free and fair elections with integrity as the ground of our democracy in the sacredness of government of the people, by the people, for the people. We will not retreat.
Mr. Linton says the laws would have to be changed to facilitate voting by Dominicans living overseas.
We vote in Dominica for government of Dominica to run the affairs of Dominica for Dominicans living in Dominica. If we want a government of Dominica to run the affairs of Dominica for Dominicans living in Dominica and all around the world, then we must change our laws. Under the existing laws, we have a vote where you live system. Citizens who are entitled to vote become qualified to vote by being resident in a particular polling district in Dominica for at least 3 months prior to registration. A violation of the residency requirement by being absent from Dominica for more than 5 years disqualifies that citizen from being on the list of eligible voters.
Still on the matter, Chairman of the Electoral Commission, Gerald Burton, says the draft legislation for electoral reform fully satisfies international standards and best practices.
Burton shared with the panel discussion Wednesday some of the outcomes of having election observers from the OAS, CARICOM and the Commonwealth Secretariat in 2009 and into 2014. He outlined feedback and recommendations made by legal and electoral framework expert Pauline Walsh. Walsh renewed the call of the election observers for identification cards and sanitization of the voters' list.
On the first page of that addendum, the legal expert stated as follows, quote, the proposed amendment to the House of Assembly Elections Act, the Registration of Electors Act, Registration of Electors SRO regulations, and the House of Assembly Elections Amendment regulations are important not only in appeasing the public outcry of the Dominican citizenry for electoral reform, but for the impact on and the reaching implications for electoral reform. She went on to say, most of what is proposed in the draft aligns with many of the suggestions made in the earlier report, which was prepared independently of the proposed amendments. Satisfaction to an extent, I continue, is also achieved with the recognition that some of the recommendations made in the Commonwealth Observers Report of 2014 and the reports of the other observation groups have found expression in the proposed amendments. She continued, notably is the regime which the amendments seek to introduce for the use of the national identification cards. Also notable are the regimes which are envisaged to be put in place to assist in the creation of a sanitized voters register. The amendment to Section 11 of the Registration of Electors Act and the creation of a new Part 3 to the Act allowing for the Commission to embark on a reconfirmation exercise are indeed notable and commendable initiatives. She continued, these areas of reform, if properly implemented and administered, can only redound to the benefit of the electoral process and the advancement of the overall concept of electoral reform.
Section 57A and 57B of the 2018 draft bills, which dealt with bribery and treating, have since been removed. Burton insists any new system would have to be thoroughly tested first.
Unless we have had sufficient time to introduce the new system and to satisfy ourselves through proper testing that it is fully operational, I would not recommend that the system be used in any upcoming elections. I maintain this position. We have examples right here in our region of the dangers and the distrust which can emerge from any malfunctioning of the electoral system in the course of a general election. I have heard much of the ability of other states to reform their systems in record times. I am, however, also aware of the disquiet and suspicion brought on by delays in the issuance of ID cards, in the late delivery of election materials, or in the breakdown of technology, as has happened in the elections of these states.
You are watching the Channel 5 News. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Persons with TB sneeze or cough, healthy persons nearby breathe in the droplets and the bacteria can lodge in their lungs. People with weakened immune systems such as HIV/AIDS, alcohol and drug users, smokers, children, and the elderly are most susceptible. Persons with a cough should take precautions when in contact with persons in public places. Cover your mouth when sneezing and coughing. Visit your doctor or health center. You must complete your treatment. TB can be cured even with HIV. Be responsible. Help stop the spread of TB and HIV. Protect yourself and others.
Welcome back. The Chinese Dominica Friendship Hospital has been outfitted with a $2.5 million piece of equipment. The high-intensity focused ultrasound or HIFU machine is a donation from the government of the People's Republic of China. Health Minister Dr. Kenneth Daru says the machine is a significant addition to Dominica's healthcare system.
This is not so new technology. In fact, this technology has been around for the past decade and a half, but it has recently been approved by the Food and Drug Administration of America. So outside of this, we still had other developed countries like Australia, Canada, who would have been using this equipment to treat various forms of cancers. But we know that a lot of us like to use America as a benchmark, and the FDA in particular as it pertains to pharmaceuticals, equipment, and otherwise. So it was finally approved by the FDA back in 2016, if I recall, back in 2016 to begin what they call non-invasive surgical treatment.
Dr. Daru explained that the HIFU machine will be useful in treating localized cancers.
So the main use you would have found, or maybe even listening to speak, would be tumors, both benign tumors, certain malignant tumors, especially prostate. It has been proven useful in the treatment of prostate, but in recent months, in recent years, so I've been using treatment of kidney, among many In fact, they will not be going to use in brain tumor, cardiovascular, circulatory issues, etc. Now, to the myth that people believe that it is a cosmetic tool. So yes, they have been used over the years, you know, anti-procedures and anti-wrinkling, etc. But this wonderful piece of equipment we see is a special tool.
Dominica is one of 2 Caribbean countries which have this piece of equipment. The private sector has been challenged to develop a business continuity plan which governments can use to help formulate its MSME policy. That's the word from Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Esther Thomas. Thomas was addressing the recent disaster risk reduction training organized by the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association, and the Dominica Youth Business Trust earlier this week.
We do partner with the DIC, and so certainly the outcome we look forward that being shared with us, because as we ourselves in the Ministry of Commerce plan for the business environment, and we are actually developing a MSME policy that would necessarily have us understand what is necessary to put in policy. So we need to advise government on all the requisite policies that are necessary to govern the sector. And so the results of this workshop would be very instructive for us, because certainly now we have to ensure we have an element that speaks to policy direction where disaster risk reduction is concerned.
Executive Director of the DAIC, Lizra Fabian, reminded private sector entities that developing a cohesive and effective business continuity plan cannot be done in isolation.
Recently, at the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction, which took place last week in Geneva, the focus was on sharing best practices among all disaster risk reduction experts internationally. And as part of the report that was produced, they encourage that change does not happen in silos, meaning that Dominica Tours, if you do your action plan, that change can happen just by you. We need to operate together, we need to collaborate, and through this disaster risk reduction workshop, in partnership with even the Ministry of Commerce and our other private sector enterprises, we can achieve the change that we desire.
And the business community has been urged to show greater interest in reducing the risk of disasters in the workplace. Coordinator of the Dominica Youth Business Trust, Carrie-Ann Remy Timothy, urged the young entrepreneurs to be serious about developing a business continuity plan.
Most times when our young entrepreneurs hear the word business continuity or resilient business, it doesn't even come to their mind that it's about them. I think they're thinking of Domlec and Owasco and Lime and some of the bigger companies. And today we want to tell young persons or young entrepreneurs that it involves them. Maybe they're even the ones more affected than Domlec and Owasco who have all the connections. That in terms to be able to continue producing, to bounce back as quickly after a disaster, that they need to put in place a business continuity plan. It might not be as many pages as the big companies. It might be a 2-page plan, but a plan is needed. And a business continuity workshop will provide them with the information that they need to be able to put a business continuity plan together. So it's not something for the bigger companies. Our young entrepreneurs need to know that this is part of what they need to do. And as DYBT coordinator and my office, we're taking it on as our mandate to teach our young entrepreneurs and to hold their hand to get them ready for the hurricane season and disasters by helping them develop business continuity plans.
Executive Vice President of the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association has also added his voice to the call for more business places to look at strengthening their continuity plans. Kevin Francis says a well-developed plan would also augur well for the tourism industry.
I would just like to put a call out to our tourism sector to pattern their actions on you all. You all are taking a proactive approach to ensure that your business can continue to operate midst disasters, after disasters, and taking the necessary steps to plan for these risks and disasters. What we've discussed in this workshop is that a disaster risk reduction and preparedness is not something that is finite, it's not a goal, it's something that is constantly shifting, constantly evolving, and as such, we have to be on the ball in order to take advantage of this shifting landscape.
The two-day disaster risk reduction training came to an end on Thursday.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow.
To end the news, the headlines again. Government and opposition parliamentarians remain polarized after panel discussion on electoral reform. Prostate cancer patients to benefit from high-intensity focused ultrasound machine, a first at the PMH. And the private sector business continuity plan to inform government's MSME policy. Feel free to contact us at news@marpin2k4.com. You can also access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Andrea Louis, and to all of our viewers around the world, thank you so much for watching. Join us next time.